The Bible that you and I use is likely a Protestant Bible. I have some 30, maybe even 40 different Bible versions in my office and at home. And I use them from time to time. I don't mind using the Catholic Douay version, all right? But I'm aware when I'm using it that, wait a minute, there are things in here that are in here because they agree with their doctrine, all right? I have a Protestant Bible. I cut my teeth on the King James. And while I use quite a few other versions, this one is just kind of burned in through the years. So I use the King James. Now, if you don't know, you need to have some understanding about how the King James Bible came about. It was a time in English history when they wanted to make sure they didn't have a tinge of Catholicism. You know, this is Protestantism trying to rid itself of any taint of Catholicism. And there was a big battle going on. And when people are angry and whatever, they do things sometimes out of that might not happen otherwise. So you need to know a little bit about how this King James Bible came into being. And if you want to do a little quick history for yourselves, then you get your King James and you read the foreword to it right here. And it will give you the actual history of how the King James Bible came about. To the most high and mighty Prince James, by the grace of God, King of Britain, France, and Ireland, defender of the faith. Okay? Tells you how this Bible came into being. It was not the work of one man. It was not the work of two. It was the work of many. And what they did is go to the ancient sources, manuscripts, as best they could to bring this together from the ancient languages into the English, and then send this to all the English-speaking world. There was an ancient document that these translators appealed to in the King James, known as the Septuagint, or the LXX. If you don't know anything about the Septuagint, go do a little homework for yourself. And what happened very quickly, taking a couple of thousand years of history back there, what happened was, as one invading army after another would come into this little land we call Israel and uproot the 10 tribes and uproot this and haul the last 2 off to Babylon, and some escaped to Egypt and whatever, you had what is referred to in history as the Great Diaspora. You have the Great Scattering. And God had told them through Moses that if you don't do this and you don't do this and you don't do that, then this is what's going to result. It's not because God does it, though that's what most people believe. It's because it is a consequence of not having God's protection over you. Okay? You lost your protection. I can't shield you anymore. Well, in this great diaspora, or this scattering through the centuries here, there comes a moment in time when some of these Jews long for home and they want to go home. They were in Babylon 70 years. And that means anybody who came out, see, in the captivity, if they're still living, they were either very young at the time or they're really old. And it's the really old ones who have this longing to go back. And the young people, this is all they've known. They speak Babylonian. They don't speak Hebrew. And if they do, it's only because they heard Yiddish words at home and, you know, and whatever. So you got to get the picture. But over the centuries, some from Babylon come back here. And some from Egypt come back here. And some from here come back here. And by the time Jesus comes, you have this picture. And the picture is real clear for us in the book of Acts. Because Jesus has come, He's preached, He's died, He's resurrected, and He's gone to heaven. And now it's time for the disciples, after the day of Pentecost, when the power promised to them has come upon them, it's time for them to go and preach. And there's only 120 of them. And they're out there preaching all over Jerusalem. And the people are saying they're drunk. This is a wild and woolly bunch. Don't listen to them. And Peter stands up and he says, men and brethren, you need to listen to me. These are not drunk as ye suppose. But this is that which was spoken of by Joel the prophet. It shall come to pass in the last days. Did Peter think it was the last days? Yeah. And what happens in here is that you have this scattered of Jews who got to come back because there's another temple in Jerusalem, and we've got to come back for the feast, for the holy days. We've got to come back. This was our blessing. This was our safety. This was our calling. And so here they are at Pentecost time from all these countries they've been scattered into. And the Holy Spirit speaks through the 120, and if they didn't speak in other tongues, at least the people heard in other tongues. All right? So I'm asking you to get the picture. So now we have these Jews who love God and who love their calling and who love whatever. And we'd like to have a Bible that we can all read. Well, the problem then is exactly the problem today. We've got hundreds of languages around the world. But people can do commerce and people can meet and talk and converse with one another because we have a lingua franca. We have a common language, and it's called English. And that's why in China they're all learning English. Not because they love English, but because it becomes a common language. And in Europe, you go over there and they got all these different languages, from the Swiss to the Germans to the Dutch to the whatever, but they all learn English. Why? Because we can all converse with one another where otherwise we wouldn't even know what the other guy's talking about. The same was true with the Jews. And so what they decided to do was to take 70 LXX, 70 Hebrew wise men, scholars, who could take the Babylonian and take the Egyptian and take the whatever and the whatever and turn it into this common language, Greek. All right? So I'm asking you to understand that the LXX, the Septuagint, has played a major, major, major role in giving you and me the Protestant Bible. Largely in the Old Testament. All right? Large portions of the Old Testament. Now, if you understand what's going on here, that the Septuagint is virtually part and parcel of our Old Testament Bible, Protestant Bible, then I'm going to bring you here. And I'm going to bring you here. And I'm going to share with you some things that I discovered, okay, in this beautiful winter past. One of the things that I discovered was the Septuagint for Daniel chapter 8 does not read 2300, it reads 2400. Uh-oh. That's a Malot's moment, you know. And somewhere, those 70 bright minds had to decide, were they going to put it 24 or were they going to put it 2300? See? They put it 2400. But when the King James bright minds got together, they had to decide if they were going to make it 2300 or 2400, because obviously there are ancient manuscripts that say one thing and ancient manuscripts that say another. And I'm asking you to understand this because there are people who don't understand the difference between verbal inspiration and conceptual inspiration. Most of the trouble that exists between people and churches and denominations is because most of them out there believe in verbal inspiration. Oh, it came in a pipeline from heaven, and it says, "Thy people also shall be." No, 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 no. No. No! Verbal inspiration? No! It's conceptual inspiration. And so humanity gets into this mix, and human minds have to translate. My Protestant Bible translators said 2300. I'm writing with the 2300. You may see why, and get on the same boat with me down here. There's something else I'm asking you to see, because you see in Daniel's second vision, that's Daniel chapter 8. Why don't you take the Bible, if you've got one handy right there, and let's look at it for a moment, shall we? And in verse 1 and verse 2, I want you to take note with me. In the third year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision, see the word vision, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me, Daniel, after that which appeared unto me at the first. And he's referring to something that happened to him several years before that's recorded in Daniel chapter 7. And he said, I saw in a vision. See that word vision? Right there. In the Hebrew Bible, they're using Hebrew and Aramaic. They're taking from the Hebrew ancient manuscripts and the Aramaic, which was a translation from the Hebrew. And the word vision right there in the Hebrew is kazon. C-H-A-W-Z-O-N, something like that. You can spell it different ways, but it's kazon. Kazon. Vision. Okay? Now, if I keep reading in this chapter, and you keep reading in this chapter, we're going to come down to, let's go to verse 13, shall we? Then I heard one saint, that's an angel in this vision, speaking, and another saint, that's another angel, said to that certain saint which spake, how long shall be the what? Vision. See that? Do you see that? The vision. In the ancient manuscript there, it's not the word kazon. It's mareh, M-A-R-E-H. And because when you go to these ancient writings, you find two different words here for vision. The pioneers in the Advent movement, and they were not alone in this, said this part of Daniel 8 is one vision and this part of Daniel 8 is another vision. And, you know, bless your heart and mind, I was brought up with all of that, and that's what I was taught, and that's what I've lived with. I call it preconditioning. I call it, you know, a mindset. That this is one vision and this is another. And for years I've been in seminars and I've said there's Daniel 8a and there's Daniel 8b. And during this lovely winter past, I decided to read it and read it and read it and read it and read it. And this is what I discovered. That what our fathers, pioneer fathers, did was put the 2300 and mareh together and totally remove it from the kazon. But if you read it, you will discover that it's 2300 in context with the ram and the goat, as well as one saint asking the other one, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily, to give both the host and to be trampled underfoot. See, that was an insight for me. And I'll tell you how it came about. I said, wait a minute. This is King James, heavily influenced by the Septuagint. Methinketh I'm going to go find Daniel 8 in the Septuagint and see how they handled Chazon and Mereh. 70 bright minds, well versed in these languages and well enough versed in the Greek to really become the focal point for most of your major Bibles, from the Jewish Bible to the Catholic Bible to the Protestant Bible to whatever. Hear me. And I suspected, once this thought occurred to me by reading it in the English and seeing that the 2300 was just as much part of, contextually, that Chazon vision as the Mereh vision, I almost knew what I was going to find when I turned to the Septuagint. I knew it. And sure enough, I wanted to see how these 70 bright scholars translated Chazon. Vision. And I wanted to see how they translated Mereh. Vision. And it was the same word there as there. Are you listening? I haven't lost you. What I'm trying to say to you is the people who are responsible for most of the Bibles around did not make some great distinction between Chazon and Mereh. They recognized they're dealing with Hebrew and Aramaic and translation problems, trying to marry expressions. And they said, wait a minute, vision, vision. That's why in the King James it says vision and vision. It doesn't say Chazon and Mereh. And I'm looking at myself in the mirror saying, you know, I have been preconditioned. I have for all these years of my life, this is one thing and this is another. And it's not. This is one thing. And that's why when I came to the ram and the goat and the trigger event, I said, hey, are you looking? Are you listening? I'm just trying to tell you that I'm looking at this differently than I have ever looked at it before. To make this, quotes, the numbered days of Daniel's visions and the prophecies and so forth, and not include this in the numbered days, never did make sense to me. If you don't know where to begin, you certainly don't know where to end. There is a seminal, there is a trigger event. And Daniel's second vision, recorded for us in Daniel 8, I believe, is that trigger event. Why? Because in the first vision, I have the four winds of heaven troubling peoples, nations, tongues. The four winds of heaven strove upon the great sea, said the angel to John in Revelation. The waters which thou sawest are peoples, nations, tongues, multitudes. The whole world. Did you hear Henry Kissinger saying there's trouble everywhere? The whole world is in turmoil. The markets are going backward. Business has fallen off. You know, people are insecure. And it's in that environment that a lion is saying, lion, king of beasts, lion. And he gets his lion's heart pulled out and he gets his eagle's wings pulled off. And that's where Daniel 8 begins. Daniel 8 is an enlargement upon. And so what happens is this ram with two horns grants us a geographical fix. That means I can spin the globe and put my finger down on an exact point. The river Ulai. And it's not in Salt Lake City. You understand? I don't have to look all over the world for it. I need to look where it is. I have a geographical fix. And then I have a chronological fix. Gabriel says to Daniel, verse 15 says, "Wherefore I, even I, Daniel, sought for the meaning of the vision I had seen. And a voice in heaven says, Gabriel, make this man understand the vision." He says, "Understand, son of man. This vision is at the time of the end." And, I cannot undo that in spite of college and seminary and denomination. And I can't. I don't care how many people vote Alexander the Great in. It's not the time of the end. It was not. It is not. It cannot be. It's clear, if we just let the Word speak for us, speak to us, it's clear that this belongs to the time of the end. And there is something that must mark the beginning of that, and something that must mark the close of that. And Daniel's visions are about that. All the way through to, "But the judgment shall sit and take away the bad guy's dominion, and give it to another. And his kingdom will never pass away." So we need to look at this and try to understand what's going on here. That's what I was doing, that's what I'm doing, and that's what I'm trying to share with you. All right? I have a geographical fix, I have a chronological fix. And so what happens is, this ram with two horns, the ram I believe is Islam and radical Islam at the time of the end. And there are two horns that are prominent there. They're so prominent that the power from the west, the number one king, he wound up with the first horn, and now he's about to deal with the second horn. You can put Afghanistan in the middle only because Iraq is on this side and Afghanistan is on that side, and the number two horn is in the middle. Get the picture. The Iranians have the picture. They know what's going on. It's called a squeeze play. All right? It says when this second higher horn pushes and bullies and boasts and does all these things that Ahmadinejad is doing, it says there's a power that comes from the west. It's a rough goat, it says. It's a he-goat, it says. It's a male goat, it says. And if you don't know the difference between a sheep and a goat, let's go out in the pasture for a while. Because it ain't no match. Sheep have 0 sense. 0. Goats have wicked sense. Wicked. They wait till you turn your back. And now this rough goat that comes from the west has a notable horn, it says. And Gabriel says to Daniel, that's the number one king. Now I don't know what number one means to you. It could mean Alexander the Great, but when I went back and did my history on it, I found out he wasn't number one. His father Philip was number one. And so when you share that with Adventists, they just turn red all over. I don't know why. Yes, but Alexander's kingdom broke into 4 parts. But when I went back in the history books, I found out that it broke first into 7. And after some time it was reduced to 6, and then to 5, and then to 4. And of those various reductions, the briefest period of all of them was the 4. And when you share that with Adventists, they not only turn red all over, they start trembling all over. Because you're undoing what they are so certain of. They are just, if you don't believe this, you can't get to heaven stuff. See? And I'm asking you to get real on the planet and real in the book. Because this power comes from the West, and he's got to be something big, bad, and, okay, because he comes across the face of the whole earth, it says. And he touches not the ground as he comes. So he's got to have an Air Force and a Navy. Art thou listening? And he comes to the ram, which I'd seen standing before the river or beside the river. He came to him in the fury of his power. He was moved with choler, it says. And he threw him down to the ground. And he stamped on him. And he brake both his horns. And there was none to deliver the ram out of his hand. Why is that? Now, I've got a friend here in this room. From time to time, we talk on the phone, and I have friends scattered in all kinds of places. And from time to time, we speak on the phone, and we email, and whatever. What is it? What do you think Iran is going to do? Well, there are all kinds of possibilities. Iran could attack Israel. And we have a standing treaty with the United States and Israel that any attack upon Israel will be considered by this nation as an attack upon the United States. Maybe Ahmadinejad will try and, drive them out into the sea like he's boasting. That's one possibility. Maybe he will stir up Hezbollah and Hamas and maybe he'll attack the U.S. forces as well as Israel at the same time. One possibility is that he pulls a North Korea and sets off a nuclear test. So there are many possibilities here. I don't know what Iran will do. I only know what the Bible says about these guys. They are wild men. They can't help themselves. It's genetic. They hate Israel. And it goes all the way back to Papa Ishmael. And it's been 3,500 years of this garbage. And no president of any nation, including the United States, is ever going to put an end to it. It's a kaboom that's going to put an end to it. It's called Armageddon kaboom. And by the way, the last plague is on the firstborn. Yeah. You're going to have to ponder that one a while. So, what I'm asking you to consider is that this whole prophetic process that we refer to as the time of the end, in Adventist terminology, the time of trouble, and most Christian out there, the time of tribulation, whatever label you want to pin on it, the possibility, I believe, exists in the Word right here that Iran is going to do something because it says it infuriates the power from the West, and he comes and he deals with him. And it says there's nobody to help the ram out. And right now he's got a few friends here and there, some of them big boys. But if he does something stupid, nobody's going to jump in there to help him. That doesn't happen till Armageddon, when the kings from the east come to help him. Looking at you. I believe this could have a date on it. I don't know the date. But I am a wondering person. And I'm not afraid to wonder. I'm not afraid to guess. I'm not afraid to change my mind. I'm not afraid to say, you know what? I was mistaken. But at least I tried. Okay? And the greatest risk, I'm told, that anyone can take is not to take a risk at all. So we need to clean the slate. And we need to talk about the Mayans. And we need to talk about 2012. And we need to talk about it. And I will try my best to explain to you why I'm willing to even broach the subject, because I will take heat forever over it. Matters not. During the noon recess, I changed this a bit and added a few things. If you didn't get that in your notes, this is the time to do it. Jesus on this side, Michael on that side, Moses the meek and lowly over here, and Joshua the warrior over here. We're talking about the same person. The Mayan calendar has been judged by experts outside of computer age technology to be the most accurate human calendar that we know of on the planet. All right? It has, once it was discovered and deciphered, it has been judged to be as precise as human beings can make it before the computer age. It's so precise that the Mayan calendar has predicted eclipses of the sun and the moon thousands of years in advance, not only to the day, but to the hour of the day, to the time of the day. All right? Now, we're talking about primitive, quotes, primitive people. But they were part of a whole order around the world of people from Babylon, Persia, you name it, who were watchers. We've discovered that Stonehenge in England has to do with the changing of the seasons and the way the stones are aligned and all these things. We go out here in the desert southwest here in America, and we find that what's the Indian tribe out there that's disappeared and we don't know where they've gone? Anasazi. That even the Anasazi had their sacred huts built in such a way that at the winter solstice, the sun fell right on this exact stone on the wall. Okay? And by the way, the winter solstice happens to be December 21. I'm looking at you. And so it's no strange thing that on the Mayan calendar, December 21 marked a significant change. But there had to be a year with it. And the year that the Mayans assigned nearly 1,500 or 1,500 years ago on their calendar would equate to our year of 2012. That's, a couple of years away, guys. About 2.5 years away. Now, I already knew, because I've been a student of history for much of my life, I already knew about the Mayan calendar. I've read a great deal about it. But it was this Nostradamus effect that appeared on the History Channel recently that set me back on my heels. Let me try and explain why. You see, the Mayan calendar is, in effect, 3 great stone wheels. 3. There's a large one, there's a medium, and then there's a small one. We'll talk about the small one in a minute. And these wheels are geared, just like gears, intermeshing with one another. And each gear represents a date, a time. And so as the Mayans would turn these wheels on their calendars, they were able to predict with great clarity future times in the heavens, because that's what times are. Well, something happened once upon a time, and the Mayans had to put a 3rd wheel on there. And it's geared to the other 2 great wheels. And it's that 3rd wheel that has made the Mayan calendar the most precise, exact, human-made calendar that we know of on the planet. And as I was viewing that on the History Channel, I said, this is not a Malox moment, this is an Excedrin headache. Because that 3rd wheel represents 5 1/4 days. And those 5 1/4 days were called the evil days by the Mayans. And I already knew about the 5 1/4 days. I just didn't know that what made their calendar so precise was that wheel. So if you don't have the picture, let's get the picture. We have Moses. We have the children of Israel. We have Pharaoh. We have the Exodus. We think about 1440. Some say 1445. Doesn't matter. That's BC. we have no clear definition of what the sanctuary, the plan of salvation, is all about until we come to Moses and the Exodus. We have God putting animal skins on them before He put them out of the garden. And we go another chapter in Genesis and we find out that God received a lamb as a sacrifice, as an offering. And so we surmise that the skins that were put on our first parents so they didn't leave the garden naked were probably lamb skins. And all of this is predictive. All of this is somehow shadowing what is ahead. It says, unto Cain and his offering God had no respect, but unto Abel God had respect. What did he bring? A firstling of his flock, a lamb of his flock. This God accepted. He doesn't take anything else. Now we had all of these and many other, quotes, allusions to the sanctuary. We have Abraham, and he's taking his only son up on the mountain, and God says, you're going to raise the knife on him and you're going to kill him. You're going to sacrifice your son. And Abraham raises the knife and God stops him. And there in the place, Isaac says, Father, here's the altar and here's the wood. Where's the sacrifice? God will provide. And they're caught in the thicket. So we've got type shadows for 1,000+ years here from the garden. But we don't have, quotes, a picture of the sanctuary until Moses and the Exodus. Now, when God calls Moses up into the mountain, He actually gives him 2 blueprints, not one. Most people want to focus on the blueprint singular. No. God gave him 2 blueprints. One is, be sure you build it according to the pattern shown you in the mount. And the other is, these are the times we're going to meet at the sanctuary. Blueprint number 1, the building. But if you don't know when to come, if you don't know what to do, if you don't know when I'm coming, did you hear that? If you don't know when I'm coming. So God gives blueprint number 2, the times. Call them the feast, call them the sacred festival. Put any label you want to on them. That's a blueprint. And that blueprint was based upon a calendar of 360 days per year. Wheel number 1, wheel number 2. And it can be shown, it can be evidenced in ancient history that not only these Hebrews coming as slaves out of Egypt, but the Egyptians and the Babylonians and the Chinese, and you go round the world in 1440 BC, and wouldn't you know it, everybody had a calendar of 360 days a year. So no strange thing going on here. 360 days in a year. Well, what does that mean in simple terms? It means that the sun is here at the center of our solar system, and our planet is the third rock out. And 360 days a year from A back to A means we had an almost perfectly circular orbit. Well, about 700 years after Moses, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, comes and takes the 10 tribes away, the 10 northern tribes. And about 702, 701, 700 years later, 702, 701 BC, Sennacherib sends his spokesman, his ambassadors, and then his armies down to finish the job and take away the last 2. Judah and Benjamin. Now, the king was Hezekiah. The resident prophet was Isaiah. And you're well enough acquainted with this story. If you're not, I want you to know that this record is recorded 3 times in Old Testament Scripture, and you really ought to go read them. 3 times. Somebody wanted somebody to get the point. Now it happens as we read these various accounts and the historical account from the Assyrian side of the story, it so happens that spies from Assyria came down, and they came back and told Sennacherib, the king, you know, these folk are strange down there because they've got this practice, this religious practice of every 7th year they don't plant anything. And king, this is the 7th year. And Sennacherib said, go get them, boys. And they said, no, there's more. You need to understand that they've got an even stranger practice that every 50 years, they don't plant 2 years in a row. That's the 7th year, 49. And then there's this next year, the 50th year, and they don't plant anything for 2 years in a row. And these are the 2 years. And he said, go get them, boys. So what I'm trying to tell you is that if this date in history is accurate, and this is the accepted. By the way, it was an Adventist scholar who did this chronological work through Old Testament history and shared it with the scholarly world, and it has become the accepted across denominations, historians, the whole business, okay? If this date is accurate, then we can say that 702, 701 was a Jubilee year. I'm looking at you. And thereafter, my Adventist friends went nuts, and they said, if we can figure out 702 and 701, then we can figure out the Jubilee year today. Well, there's always a fly in the ointment. And I want to show you the fly in the ointment. When this thing finally came to a crisis and a climax, it happened not only in a Jubilee year, art thou listening? It happened at Passover. Uh-oh. Whoever has eyes to hear, let him hear. So it's Passover, Jubilee year. And God does something because the Assyrians have boasted that your God cannot save you, will not save you. He didn't save your 10 brothers to the north, and He's not going to save you. And God called Isaiah in and said, go out and tell Hezekiah to get up and stop crying. The battle is not his anymore, it's mine. Okay? Now you begin to understand what the little horn does when he says, I'm God. And God says, okay, guys, the battle is mine. See? Now, you need to understand that at midnight Passover, somehow midnight and Passover go together. When it's God's time, those go together. At midnight, Passover, Jubilee year, God rained hot rocks out of the sky on the Assyrians. This is the record, okay? Great hail out of heaven. And hail in the Bible, we think is ice, not necessarily. In the original, it can be hot rocks falling out of the sky. Call them meteorites, call them whatever you want. Space junk. They fell on the Assyrian camp, and it says when they woke up in the morning, they were all dead men, 185,000 of them. Now, if you think it's pure chance, happenstance, just good luck, if you think whatever, that at midnight Passover in a Jubilee year, God gets into the picture, well, you don't need prophecy. You need help. Look, whatever happened that brought the rocks down out of the sky at Passover passed near enough the earth that it ellipsed our orbit by 5 1/4 days. And that's why the calendar you and I in the world keeps today is 365 1/4 days per year. It took as much as 22 years after this event for the various civilizations and cultures around the world to adjust their calendars. And historically, these various cultures and civilizations refer to these 5 1/4 days as the evil days, as the unmentionable days, as the unwanted days, as the whatever. Meet wheel number 3. Right here. And so I'm watching, I'm listening, and I'm saying, wait a moment. What these guys are saying is that on this date equivalent in ages to come, translated December 21, 2012, there's going to be a change in the heavens. And I'm saying, wow. Why am I saying wow? Because you see, 700 years go by, and wouldn't you know it, a couple of hundred more years go by, and Daniel shows up. And Daniel, God says, I'm going to give you visions. I'm going to give you some information, and I want you to write it down. But it's not for you, Daniel. And it's not for this time, Daniel. It's for the time of the end. And so what God does through Daniel and later through John in the book of Revelation is give him all of this sanctuary blueprint stuff. Every vision of Daniel is about the sanctuary. Check it out. And about sanctuary times. And wouldn't you know it, even though the world in Daniel's day is keeping a calendar of 365 1/4 days, his visions of the time of the end are about a calendar of 360 days. I'm not losing you, am I? You understand that there's a disconnect between Moses and Daniel. Somebody's tampered with the clock. This is why when my friends come along and tell me we know that 1987-88 is a Jubilee year, I said, guys, send me a postcard. And then when it didn't happen in 87-88, they figured it would be 3.5 years later, and they said 1991. Send me a postcard. And then when it didn't happen in 91, they said it's 1994, 3.5 years after that. I don't know where they keep coming up with the 3.5 years. Couldn't figure it out for the life of me. You got a Bible? Daniel chapter 2. You got to see it. You know it. You know it already, but you need to see it. Nebuchadnezzar is a pagan heathen king. And the God of heaven stoops low, just like he did with Pharaoh, to give light and instruction and knowledge to this pagan, heathen king. Well, Daniel 2 is all about the king having the dream and about the wise men, soothsayers, magicians, and astrologers who are called in by the king. You're the guys on the payroll. You're supposed to be in touch with the gods. Tell me what my dream means. King, if you'll tell us a dream, we'll tell you what it means. I can't remember it. You better find out from the gods. This is why when Daniel is referred to later in this chapter, he is referred to as a man in touch with the gods. Please listen. Now in verse 28, I want you to see it. Daniel says to the king, there's a God in heaven that revealeth secrets. And this word in Daniel, secrets, has to do with time. And maketh known to the king what shall be. When? In the latter days. So when my good friends come along and start talking about Babylon, Medo Persia, Greece, and Rome, I'm saying, it's not what it says. It says last days. Now I back up just a few verses here, and I'm going to read verses 20 and 21 with you. It's all in the same context, same conversation. Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. Next verse. And he, that is God, changeth the times and the seasons. He removeth kings. He sets up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the, what's that word? What is the wisdom God gives to the wise? The times. And knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. Now you keep reading, the context is latter days. So I know, you know, we have discussed for years that there is a time coming when God is going to change the clock. God is going to change the heavens. Uh-oh. So I'm willing to put my neck, as it were, in a noose with you. I should have lived long enough to be smarter than this. But I've got a secret. And my secret is, if you go away and say to anyone that that guy said it, I will erase the tape. Okay? All right, let's watch. In Daniel's visions, we know that there are at least 1,335 days. Right? Right. There's something that happens, and from that time, on day 1290, a wicked king sits. A boastful, arrogant, proud, would-be God. The abomination or unclean thing that desolates God's temple, defiles it. Day 1290. From the time the daily is taken away, whatever that means, and the abomination making desolate set up. Jesus says, standing where he ought not. 1,290 days. Now we've got this other time in here, this 1,260 days, that has everything in the world to do with the beast system, because that's the time allotted to him, and has everything to do with the two witnesses, because that's the time allotted to them. So when the enemy does his thing, God will do his thing. Now, watching this Nostradamus effect and all of this, and I'm saying, well, I've never been good enough. I have 2,300, and I've got 1,335. And what's left may be this. That's just how my mathematical mind works. See, if I subtract that from this, then this is what's left. This may be what's left. And so when I add these, it's equal to that. And if I need to make it 2,400, I'll make it 2,400. But right now, this is what I'm working on. Okay?
Rather than evenings and mornings, it now means days. Is that what you're
But
saying?
the way it's given in Daniel's vision, it can be days or 1,150 evenings and 1,150 mornings or 1,150 days. And if it's a secret number, which it says that it is, it may be both.
Now I get it.
Okay. So I'm not too far, I'm trying to stay as... All right, let's look at this for a moment. And if you've had your nap, this is the time to wake up. Because, I sat down at the table and I'm saying, well, hold it, if I back up from this date... And by the way, the winter solstice is that moment in a year when we change from one... Okay? We're beginning to lean the other direction. When I backed up 965 days. Yeah, but the days grow longer by a minute a day, and on and on and on. When I started counting back here, it took me a little while to figure it out. I don't think I'm going to tell you where it comes. That way I would be safe and you would go home and you would say it and I wouldn't get into trouble. See? Right? Am I wise or foolish? I can't help myself. So you'll want to put this on your notes. You're taking notes? Here it is. 050110. And so when I did this a couple of months ago, I went and put this on my calendar. And I said, I want to know if anything happens just before or on, just after, anything around this time, if anything happens over there, where it ought not, you know, right here. That's only a couple of weeks away, guys. I mean, 3 at the most.
How'd you get that date?
Because I counted back 365 and a quarter days. Over here, I count only 360. I counted back 365 and a quarter days, 965 days, and it comes to May 1 of 2010. Now, if you go away and say, that guy said, I will deny it. All right? And I will erase the tape, guys. No. I'm not setting dates. I'm only telling you that when I saw that third wheel, and I put that together with Daniel 2, I said, something's going on here. Because what did the Mayans say? Did they say it was the end of the world? Did they say it was doomsday? No, they said it's a change in the heavens. And that's in the book, my friend. That's in the book. By the way, if you should favor yourself and see either of those DVDs, you will see that the historical evidence has been gathered in ancient historical writings from the Chinese to you name it around the world, and there are many different sources who have been, and they have arrived at December 21, 2012. I don't know that that's correct. I mean, December 21, 2012, if the world keeps turning, will come. But I don't know if that's where we have a flyby in the heavens and it changes our orbital period. I don't know. The way that would possibly work is the sun, and we go around. It very likely passed by on the outside, and that would have the tendency of lengthening our orbital period. And it was Passover, so that's on this side of the sun. But this is on this side of the sun. And we're going this way, and we need to retrograde our orbit by 5 1/4 days. So it would possibly pass between us and the sun, which would scare everybody on the planet to church. Human beings. But it would also have the tendency of retrograding our orbit. That is, reducing our period around the sun. And so I have some exciting things ahead, that I'm looking for. I'm watching with considerable interest what's going on. Not here. I'm watching the news on a daily basis if I can. And if you don't see and if you're not following this rhetoric, which is almost white hot now, between Washington and Tel Aviv, and Washington and Tehran and Tel Aviv, and if you're not watching, if you're not listening, you're not a watcher. I could say you're not wise, but when we fell from grace, when we fell, we became very insecure. We come into this world kicking and screaming. And if we've got enough energy left, when we go out kicking and screaming. We're very insecure in this life, in this world. And we do everything that we can, work all our lives to set a little money aside so we can retire in peace and comfort. And wouldn't you know it, somebody gets sick and is gone, and mama's alone, daddy's alone, and everything they saved, now the kids pay lawyers and squabble over. Ain't life grand? We're very insecure in this life, and we do everything that we can to secure ourselves. And I know which day is the Sabbath. I know it. And some guy comes along and says, "Are you sure?" And I want to wring his neck. Because I've been standing on a sure, certain concrete foundation. And this guy says, "Well, which side of the date line are you on?" Are you listening, folks? This is one thing I believe you and I and the world can know for sure. That if God resets the clock, we're going to know where to start day 1 and where day 7 comes. Are you listening? And the first time in your life and mine and the life of this planet since Jesus was here, we can know which day is which day. I'm not trying to undo the Sabbath. I'm only trying to tell you that I go to seminars and there are 3 groups of Adventists present, and every one of them have a different version of which day is the Sabbath and which feast day is the actual feast day and which is. And I'm saying, guys, give me a break. We live on a very insecure planet. It's when God steps into human history that we begin to know there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets and maketh known. See, I tell you, I'm looking forward to it. I'm nervous about it. I'm looking forward to it. No one in this room would be happier than yours truly if nothing happens on or about this time. I'll say, whew. You want to embarrass me? Whew. But what I'm trying to tell you with everything in me is I think we're knocking on that door. And the evening news and the front page every day are screaming at us. On the news it said this, that the so-and-so, such and such minister of Iran, the defense minister, the whatever, not Ahmadinejad, this guy is evidently next to him or whatever, has announced to the world that Iran has just received the high-class, high-powered centrifuges that it has been, and now it can really turn up the juice. I try not to lose sleep over these things, and I don't lose sleep because I'm fearful and afraid, but I do lie awake at night thinking about all the people that I have known in my Adventist odyssey who haven't even a clue, who don't even have a clue that anything's going on the planet. It's go to church and sing a hymn and go home. And I'm saying, this is terrible. This is horrible. This is unconscionable. How can it be? But it is. It is reality. It is reality. If you want to take those in notes, you can. If you want to check dates for yourself, you can. And please, pure guess. pure guesswork. I can't say that's guesswork. It's been very accurate and very likely to be accurate on this date. So all I'm asking you to consider with me is this fact. The world is watching to the point that they have a new movie coming out, 2012. And I'm sure it's Hollywoodized from A to Izzard. But the point of it is people are watching. And if people are, and we come to December 21, 2012, and there is some spectacular event in the sky, watch out, world. Talk about rumor, talk about superstition, talk about whatever. The churches will be full.